help me with this then, Hal. When you say that the others were agitators, and the president had posted quite soon after the event, didn't he, saying that the woman we heard on that particular video, saying this woman has been shot, my God, that she was a professional agitator.
Yes,
what is
I'm saying that.
Indeed, you're saying that too, Hal. What is the evidence for that?
Because it's documented. Look, if you go online, you can see it. These are paid. This is all funded. This is not organic. The people that are going out there are most of them are paid. Certainly the organizers of it are paid.
Yeah.
This woman appeared to be one of the organizers.
Well, forgive me, Hal. I'm
these
keen
are
to
not
understand.
protests.
Indeed, I'm keen to understand what you're telling me. Are you saying that the woman who shouted in the way that she did, and perhaps the woman involved in the shooting itself, were agitators, paid agitators?
Yes.
And you say that's documented. Please tell me, what is the documented evidence that is true?
Because we can follow the money and the funding of these groups.
You say these groups. What evidence is there that either the woman who shouted or the woman in the car were a part of the groups to which you refer?
What evidence is there? Okay,
yes.
Because these people are coming in.
Now, protests are continuing in Minneapolis. The tensions build after that shooting.
This is what democracy sounds like. Show me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Our streets. Our streets. Our streets. Our streets. Our streets. Louder. Our streets. Louder. Our streets.
Just a sense of some of the protests in Minneapolis. Now, let's first of all then welcome to the program and check in with Louis Krause. He's the crime reporter for the Star Tribune, and he is covering this story. Welcome to the show, Louis.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Do tell us, what is the latest there in Minneapolis?
So it's been a hectic morning. There have been protests over at the main federal Whipple building, the building where detainees are taken by ICE agents. And so there's been a lot of fighting over there. This morning, I'm over at the scene of the shooting. It's a much more mild scene over here where a mixture of community members, people who are very sad and grieving, are placing flowers and candles and are also speaking with a lot of the international reporters that are showing up here today. So it's a very kind of quiet and somber scene around the neighborhood where this shooting happened.
And is there any really serious disorder going on?
I would say the most is over at this. So it's this federal building where ICE agents take the people they arrest. And that's a scene where people have been protesting every day, holding up signs. But obviously now that a woman's been killed, it's ratcheted up a lot with protests over there. And it looks like a lot of the federal agents with military style gear having face-offs with those protesters. And so over there, it's pretty crazy seeming, but here it's definitely a lot calmer than last night, when there were a lot of protests going through downtown and around in South Minneapolis with people who are very angry, banging on the glass of the courthouse downtown, and a lot of frustration, people who feel like they're just protesting, but that upset that it's not really seeming to actually lead to any change with ICE agents leaving the community.
Okay, just on the shooting itself, there is an FBI, a Federal Bureau of Investigation unit, whose job it is to investigate where federal agents are involved in a shooting, a fatal shooting in particular. What about local law enforcement? What role are they playing?
Yeah, that'll be interesting in terms of who will be releasing information and if they will. There's a local agency called the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, and it's a Minnesota-based agency that is involved typically, for my stories, when it's an officer-involved shooting, when an officer shoots someone. They typically put out the names in a few days of an officer who shoots someone, and they conduct the investigation. So it seems like they're going to be working along with the FBI. And I think a lot of people around here are wondering and concerned if and when the name of the agent will be released and, what this agent status is. I think a lot of people are curious about that. Yeah. If he was just flown out to a different city. But I'm not sure exactly what the results will be. Typically, when the BCA investigates, they give you a ruling if use of force was justified in a certain situation. So my guess would be at some point that would come out, but it sometimes takes weeks or months.
Okay, and look, within a very short while of the shooting, we heard the head of Homeland Security, Kirsty Noem, and we saw a posting on Truth Social from President Trump, effectively prejudging the whole thing, saying that the officer, the ICE agent, was acting in self-defense. Kirsty Noem spoke about the woman who was shot and killed as being a domestic terrorist. And that must have had an effect on the trust in the FBI investigation from people in Minneapolis.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think seeing the video, what's been pretty major here in Minneapolis is the response network, people who go and actually film what ICE agents do. And I think when Kristi Noem characterized it that way, I think a lot of people here that enraged them more in terms of seeing the video, and in their opinion, it seems to show that the car misses the agent mostly, and that the last couple of shots that he fires are while it's driving by him on the side, not while he's near the front of the car. And so a lot of people here are definitely angry about that, and just not really believing what the rationale is, especially in this case. There've been a lot of these sorts of arrests, and this seems like one of the most, in their eyes, egregious mischaracterizations by the government.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard from the mayor of Minneapolis, we've heard from the governor of the state, we've heard from people there on the ground in Minneapolis. This has become, hasn't it, very emblematic of the tension between the administration in Washington and the state, the Democrat-controlled state, and the city, and the wider conflict between the federal administration and the political powers on the ground, especially where they are in opposition to Washington.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It's a very tenuous situation, and it's a very, I would say, a lot of conflict as well between the city residents and local police, who have the difficult position of having to figure out their role in all of this. You know, a lot of the residents feel as though, even though the city says that it has a separation ordinance and that police can't help with it or help with ICE operations, the local police do have to, in some cases, step in when there's, conflict and fighting between agents to keep a barrier. And it's definitely like a odd situation. It feels like for a lot of the residents here that the federal government is sort of trying to flood into this city specifically because of its more progressive policies, and feels like it's getting targeted by the Trump administration.
Okay, Lewis Krause from the Star and Tribune in Minneapolis. Thank you so much for joining us with your updates on this story. Now let's get the thoughts of Hal Lambert, who's a Republican Party donor and a part of President Trump's inaugural committee. Hal, welcome to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Have you seen the video? I'm assuming you must have done, of the woman in Minneapolis. What did you make of it?
Well, I mean, I think she tried to run over the officer. The Star reporter just said, well, she mostly missed him. So she did hit him. She slammed on the gas. She was disrupting the authorities to be able to do their job. She blocked the roads. These are mostly paid people. These are organized agitators. These are not community members. These are paid, organized agitators doing this. This is very similar, quite frankly, to the 1950s and 60s. Eisenhower had to send in both federalize the National Guard, send in the 101st Airborne to integrate Little Rock, Arkansas schools, because the governor there, the local people there were trying to stop it from happening. They were trying to stop what the law says was passed. Kennedy did it in Mississippi. He sent in 30,000 military people into Mississippi in 1962. And if you look at what happened at Kent State in 1970, 4 students were shot. Protest there. Nixon won re-election in 1972 with 49 states and this largest majority ever in the country. So, look, just because the media and certain outlets want to hype this up as something that it's not, doesn't make it so. And look, she was there to disrupt, and she didn't follow instructions. And then when they walked over to her car, she tried to run over the agents. You could see it. She clearly hit him on her way out, and he fired his weapon.
Well, look, I mean, you'll be more than aware that there are many people, some of them who were there at the scene when this happened, whose account of this is that the woman driving the car was seeking to execute a 3-point turn and get away from the area. They saw no grounds for a fatal shooting.
The other agitators.
Well,
the people, the other agitators.
Help me with this then, Hal. When you say that the others were agitators, and the president had posted quite soon after the event, didn't he, saying that the woman we heard on that particular video, saying this woman has been shot, my God, that she was a professional agitator.
Yes,
what is
I'm saying that.
Indeed, you're saying that too, Hal. What is the evidence for that?
Because it's documented. Look, if you go online, you can see it. These are paid. This is all funded. This is not organic. The people that are going out there are most of them are paid. Certainly the organizers of it are paid.
Yeah.
This woman appeared to be one of the organizers.
Well, forgive me, Hal. I'm
these
keen
are
to
not
understand.
protests.
Indeed, I'm keen to understand what you're telling me. Are you saying that the woman who shouted in the way that she did, and perhaps the woman involved in the shooting itself, were agitators, paid agitators?
Yes.
You say that's documented. Please tell me, what is the documented evidence that is true?
Because we can follow the money and the funding of these groups.
You say these groups. What evidence is there that either the woman who shouted or the woman in the car were a part of the groups to which you refer?
What evidence is there? Okay,
yes.
Because these people are coming in.
No, we're talking about specific people. You pointed specifically to the woman in the street who shouted and the woman who was shot dead. Those two people. Do you say there is evidence that they were part of an agitator group?
I don't know if those two people collected a paycheck, but they were certainly organized in a method by paid people to be there.
And how can
That's
you
what
know
I'm
that?
saying.
How can you know that?
Because it's been reported
in
out
the case
there.
Of these two women, Hal.
Because it's not an accident. She was the one blocking the road. The woman that got shot was blocking the road with her vehicle. That's not a protest. Yeah. Is that a protest, John?
Well, I'm not giving an independent view on this. I'm simply asking you about what you say is firm evidence that they are agitators and paid, and that's what they were doing. You have just said this is about circumstances. I think you're telling me that you believe this is the case on what the court would call circumstantial evidence, which is quite unproven. Is that fair?
No, I would say if this were to go to a court, that they could easily prove that the people there were part of an organized effort to disrupt ICE agents. This is not organic. These aren't people in the neighborhood coming out to try to disrupt.
Yes.
This is all, and what's happening today is the same thing.
Okay, but it is.
And by the way, we've seen the fraud. We've seen the massive fraud in the healthcare and the child care stuff.
No, we have covered that. We've covered that story, indeed. We've covered that story.
Yeah, I know.
It's not directly related to the fatal shooting of this woman.
Because it's about a corrupt governor. It's about a corrupt attorney general. It's about a corrupt state, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Minnesota is corrupt to the bone.
Okay, let me put this to you. Tom Homan, who's a senior official in the Trump administration, he said quite soon after the shooting, I'm not going to make a judgment on one video. Was that a reasonable position?
It was obviously reasonable for him. We've seen multiple video angles of it.
It was reasonable for him. The president posted the shooting was in self-defense, and he blamed the radical left. This is before any investigation has barely begun, let alone being concluded. And we've heard Kirsty Noem.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Excuse me. Do you think the president of the United States doesn't have classified briefings on who's out there doing these agitations and organized efforts? You don't think he really knows what's going on there? Of course he does.
Well, if that's the case,
he doesn't need reporters to go and find it, because we know reporters aren't going to investigate.
But if that was the case, that would be of obviously great interest to everyone, not least me. But so far, I've had no indication and seen no such indication that such indication or intelligence even exists. I wonder what you say then finally, because I need to move on, and thank you again for joining me. I wonder what you say to what you've heard from the governor of the state, the mayor of the city, and others, that this is really ultimately about the president exerting domination and power over cities and states which are led by politicians whom he opposes. It's to him, the president, an opportunity. And we've seen the ICE agents described as, well, they've been compared to the Gestapo, which is obviously harsh language, even to stormtroopers. What do you say to those assertions?
Well, what I say is these are corrupt people. Waltz is clearly corrupt. He's been referring to these ICE agents as Nazis, as you just said, which inflames tensions. They're doing nothing to ratchet anything down. And like I said, I'd compare this very similar to the civil rights movements that happened in the 50s and 60s, where you had governors and local politicians that did not want to obey the federal law that had been passed. This group doesn't want to obey federal immigration laws, and they think that they have the right, as the governor of Minnesota, to come in and tell everybody, you know, we're not going to let ICE agents in our state. He thinks he has the right to do it. He doesn't.
Just lastly, and again, thank you. This has not seemed escalated. There is no major disorder on the streets of Minnesota, but we have heard President Trump speak in the past about dealing with disorder on the streets by means of invoking the Insurrection Act and bringing in the military if he's not able to do what he wishes to do by way of deployment of the National Guard. What would you say to the idea of that, even as an option?
When you say what he wishes to do, you mean enforce the law. So, in other words, if he's not able to enforce the law because the local elected officials refuse to cooperate, and they create, calling our federal agents Nazis, and create this type of issue, yeah, I mean, it's been done previously, like I said, by 2 previous presidents.
All right, Hal, I have to leave it there. Thank you for joining me on the program this afternoon.